Welcome to Bloodbath and Beyond. Today we review Raven Banner Entertainment's Baskin, where we enter a world of suffering and madness.
Directed by Can Evrenol and starring Ergun Kuyucu, Gorkem Kasal, Faith Dagos, and Mehmet Cerrahoglu, Baskin is a Turkish film about 5 cops who get called in as backup in the middle of nowhere. They go into this abandoned police station and uncover a very weird, dark and creepy satanic cult that are doing some insane shit. So what do we like?
This is a dark and creepy film. They set the mood perfectly in this film because you're going in really not knowing what it's about, but they've captured such tension and such horrific beauty.
Yeah, I guess so.
With like the use of lighting and the use of camera angles and shot types. You don't know where to focus, you don't know what's going on, and it's just like all over the place, but in a good way.
It's all done with a purpose, and you're supposed to be disoriented. It's that kind of movie. It's very out there. This movie has a really strange vibe to it, and it's really neat the way that it's done because you're not really sure what is happening. And well, it does get confusing, and we weren't sure if there's supposed to be a hidden message, but we watched it behind the scenes, and there isn't. It's essentially just a big nightmare. And that's not a spoiler, there's not a big reveal of it being a nightmare or anything. It's just like, what happens if there's some crazy, weird cult living in a forest somewhere? And that's what, there's no deeper meaning than that, to my knowledge, based on what the director said. So other people may have drawn different conclusions, but in any case, it was really neat because they used dreams as kind of a way to get some dialogue that couldn't otherwise be handled. Because if we have 2 characters in 2 different situations, it might snap out of reality and go to them just sitting and talking in a bar and kind of explaining what's going on in their minds and some of the backstory without actually having their characters talk about these things. It's kind of weird, but it's really well done.
Because this whole film is based kind of off of lucid dreaming, but lucid nightmares, more or less. The whole thing is just like playing on satanic rituals and fear that you have in the darkness. To touch more on this nightmarish world, we had really interesting character designs. The cult members were absolutely creepy, and like they did a great job with like the makeup and the costumes. They're half naked, their eyes are wrapped up, their face are covered, and they're just like screaming and covered in blood. And it's really uncomfortable and creepy.
You can tell it was an uncomfortable set, that's for sure. Moving on from that, like they even have a servant to a head chief and the head chief himself, and both of them very, very interesting looking characters, and they're both really creepy in their own way as well. Just the whole atmosphere that's created from the design of the characters to just walking down halls lined with body bags and just, I don't know, it's just a really unsettling atmosphere. It's very similar to something like Clive Barker would create. Now it's time for our dislikes. Now some films I like to know very little going in, but I think this is one of those movies that you kind of almost want to know a little bit. Like, I think it's worth noting, like I mentioned earlier, there isn't supposed to be some deep, deep meaning to this movie. And so the whole time that I'm watching it, I was trying to constantly figure out like what they were trying to get across. And because there isn't that depth, I think you might enjoy that if you don't try and bang your head against the wall, trying to understand the true meaning of this film, because there is not one.
If you're creating something that is very out of the norm and not usual, you are expecting there to be some resolve. You're expecting there to be this deeper symbolism. Because they didn't do that, it's gonna leave you confused. And like that, I think, is the worst thing to do in a story, is to leave your audience confused.
I really don't know how to explain this film.
It's kind of like watching an episode of The Twilight Zone, but you don't get an ending.
It was a short film, which is included on the disc, and Eli Roth basically went up to the director and said, you should make this a feature. And 27 days later, they did.
And I think that's what the problem lies is, in the story, they didn't come up with anything more. It's based on a short, and we watched the short, and the short is essentially the film summed up in 10 minutes.
There was no extra substance to it that would make you really want to watch the feature over the short film. I would recommend checking out the short film.
Yeah, the short film was great.
I think we should go on to our final thoughts and ratings. I don't think this is a great film, but it's certainly far from a bad film. It's creepy, it's got a really neat atmosphere, and like the production design is fantastic. However, it lacks some like key story details that allow you to kind of understand what the hell is going on in such a mixed up universe that they've created. If I were to just show clips of this movie, you probably think it is one of the best films ever. However, as it is in a long format, I really don't think it is one of the best films ever. I think it is above average, but there's not enough there for me to grasp onto. I probably wouldn't watch it again. So with that being said, I'm gonna give this 3.5 buckets full of frogs out of 5.
Baskin is an interesting film. It's shot beautifully. It sets a great tone in making you feel uncomfortable, making you feel disgusted at times, and really creeped out. They did a great job with the production value. The lighting and the costume design was very well executed. The biggest issue this film's gonna have is in its story, because the everyday film goer or the average horror fan isn't gonna get a strong appreciation out of this film because the story is too confusing. It's just a little above average and it is worth checking out. So with that being said, I'm gonna give this 3.5 Turkish carpool karaoke's out of 5.
As always, thank you for watching. Like this video and comment below with your thoughts on the film if you've seen it. If you haven't and you want to check it out, there are links in the description where you can find it. And make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay updated with everything Bloodbath and beyond.